All right, letting folks in. Hello, hello, welcome. Okay, hello, welcome. We're gonna head and get it started. Once again, this session is being recorded, but I do believe it's only folks that are with their mics on that get shown up on screen. But if you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to turn off your camera. And before we get started with anything, would like to do a land and labor acknowledgement. UW Seattle campus is situated on the ancestral homeland of the Duwamish people, the first people of Seattle. The University of Washington acknowledges the past, present, and future of the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We remember that our country is built on the labor of enslaved people who were kidnapped and brought to the U.S. from the African continent and recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We also acknowledge all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples who contributed to the building of the country and continue to serve within our labor force. We acknowledge all unpaid caregiving labor. We encourage you all to go beyond acknowledgement into actions of learning and advocacy for these peoples. So we're going to get started with our shared digital space norms. What I wanted to say hello and welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. It is one of the last few days of classes, so really appreciate it. Um, my name is Elisa. She, they, shall pronouns. We'll get into introductions from the facilitators in a little bit, but I did want to touch up on our shared digital space norms. We do have a Q&A function. We were going to turn off chat just to uh, remove any distractions from the panelists and their conversations. So with that, please be mindful of distractions. If you do turn on your camera, or happen to unmute yourself, just quickly mute yourself as well. If you turn on your camera, just make sure there's no distractions in the background. And also, the advising versus learning. This event is intended for those who already have a general understanding of social work. It seems like there's a lot of folks that are current students as well. But if you do want more information, please view the What is Social Work section on the UW School Social Work website. And we'll try our best to answer questions posed in the Q&A, monitored by the SSW team. Um, and if you have any specific questions about the applications, please review our website, attend an info session, or sign up for an advising appointment. I also wanted to remind everyone that if you need it, you are able to enable closed captioning by using the closed captioning function at the bottom of your screen. And also, we do encourage you to turn on your cameras. That way the panelists can see your faces and connect, and also use emojis. So, facilitator intro. We have Efi in the ether, in the digital space. She is our MSW recruitment specialist, and she works at the Office of Admissions. She is here. In case you need anything, please chat her. And like I said, my name is Elisa. I am an MSW candidate. I use the pronoun she, they, sha. I'm a second year clinical track student, one of the student information specialists. My focus areas and what I would like to do with an MSW is to work with queer, trans, BIPOC youth, mental health, along the mindfulness, trauma, I think my future work involves around like trauma, managing trauma and trauma symptoms. And then I've talked to one of our panelists about it, but I am interested in a PhD as well. So that is a new development. And I'll pass it to Liza.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am Liza. I am also a current MSW student doing a clinical track. I use she, her pronouns. I have uh, brown hair with bangs, and I'm currently wearing black frame glasses. And my interest in social work is mostly working with Asians, East Asian population. I am very interested in the culture and history in the region. And yes, and again, Efi is with us today. And that is our facilitator team for tonight. And I know everyone has been waiting to learn more about our panelists. So we are going to jump right into some questions we've prepared for the panelists today, and we'll hopefully touch on the different aspects of the most commonly asked questions about career pathways within MSW. If you have any questions throughout, remember to use the Q&A chat function to get your questions answered. We will have a designated time in the end of the session to answer all of those questions one by one. And again, our team members will be on standby and ready to moderate those questions to be answered by the panelists. So without further ado, let's get to know a bit more about our panelists. So we will start by asking each panelist to give a short introduction about yourselves. So please tell us your name, pronouns, the program you completed, what are your current roles. You can feel free to share some of your professional interests in social work, as well as would everyone else have answered your favorite chili day activity? Um, so, and Dakuchi, if whenever you're ready.
I love it. Thank you so much, Liza, for welcoming us into the space. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to reiterate the message, and I think my instructor side is going to come out here. If I can have some of you jump on camera, if you haven't done so already, I would love it. I'm always happy to be in space with other social workers. So if you could jump on camera, that would be fantastic. I see Jazz. I see Allison. I hope I'm saying your name right. Welcome on camera. I see Brian. I see Kia. Welcome, welcome. If you can come on camera, I see Finn. Fantastic. I love it. I love it. I love it. Please come on camera. Join us in this collaborative space. This is a safe space. We want you to feel welcomed in this environment. My name is Ndolkachu. I use he, him pronouns. I am a Black cisgender male presenting person with dark, short hair, and which is a curly afro. I'm wearing black glasses and a blue blazer. I am an MSW class of 2022. I completed it with a concentration in administration and policy, and I am the Community Partnership and Policy Manager here at Highline Public Schools. For those of you that are not familiar with Washington State, it is a district located in South King County with over 17,000 students. And I am also an instructor at the UW School of Social Work. I instruct health and mental health system policy, which is a graduate level class. So if any of you are planning on joining the MSW program and interested in taking a class, please take one of mine. I would love to see you in that space. I really wanted to jump on board when Alyssa had reached out for this opportunity because, like I iterated earlier, I love being in community with social workers. And that's really a huge passion of mine is building coalition and learning how can we come together? How can we coalesce to advance students, to advance families and communities that have been historically marginalized forward? So thank you, Elisa, Liza, and Iffy for welcoming me into this space. And I'm going to pass the baton to my esteemed colleague and cohort member, Grace.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a Korean femme presenting person. Today I have my hair down with just black and straight. I'm wearing a black shirt with a white vest and sitting against kind of a light blue background. I graduated with my MSW in 2022, and while at the School of Social Work, I was part of the Child Welfare Training and Advancement Program. And currently, I work as a program coordinator for client-based services at the Korean Community Service Center, and also work part-time as an associate therapist with a small private practice. My favorite chilly day activity is just drinking a warm drink and going for a nice little walk. And then I will pass it over to John.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Torres speaking here. I am a brown-skinned Filipino male presenting with a short beard and brown glasses, and I am wearing a gray sweatshirt. Good to be in community with everybody here. I graduated with my BASW back in 2014 and my MSW in 2015 from the Advanced Studying Program, all here at the University School of Social Work. And I'm currently a doctoral student here at UW. And my current role is I work as a research coordinator part-time over at Partners for Our Children, which is one of the affiliated research centers here at the university. And yeah, my primary work is doing evaluation over there. My favorite chilly day activity, I would say, is to throw on a Snuggie and to watch Korean dramas. I think I saw that in the chat, so I see you over there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Lev.
Thank you so much, John. I'm really excited to be here with all of you and to get the opportunity to connect with you all, other panelists. We've never met in person before, and it's really fun just to hear like what people are up to and about the years that you graduated. So my name is Lev. I'm wearing a red collared shirt and a backwards baseball cap. I'm an olive-skinned queer person. I use they and he for pronouns, and I actually work at the School of Social Work. I'm the mental health specialist for the school, which means I provide counseling and social work services for all of our students across programs. So I'm technically housed at the counseling center at UW, but I'm fully embedded in the School of Social Work, providing resources. I have a small clinical caseload. I do mentoring of student organizers. I'm just kind of up in the mix in general, really focused on student wellness. And I'm also a clinical instructor, which I never expected to do or be. And I actually find that it's just a huge honor and joy to get to work in the classroom with students too. And all of you who end up going into social work, you can teach too. And so I want to just put that out there because I feel really excited about emerging social workers moving into the classroom and all of us just sharing knowledge. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this panel today.
Thank you all for the intro. That was, wow, that was really cool to know that you all come from all walks of life, but also share this absolute passion for bettering our community. And because y'all come from all such different backgrounds, I know we are all very curious about what led you to social work. So we'll start with this question that many of the prospective students, especially those coming from a non-social work background, are interested in. Let's go trace back to your past life before social work. So could you all briefly tell us about your background before the program and what led you to pursue a career in social work?
That is by far one of my favorite questions. I host a lot of high school interns, and they always ask me, "Hey, what do you do?" And I tell them social work, and they say, "How did you end up there?" And I often say, "I've been a social worker my whole life. I was a social worker before I realized what social work was." And I think many of you can probably attest to that, whether you are a current student or a prospective student. I was born in Ethiopia, and my family moved here when I was 11 years old, and I was raised by a single mother. And we experienced a lot of economic instability. And so, what that resulted in is engaging with, social services and the social safety net systems. So, I had a direct hand experience with other social workers. So, for me, they were the ones that were wearing a cape because they helped us find housing, right? They helped us find SNAP programs so we could have food. And so I wanted to be that. I was like, I don't know what they do, but I wanted to do that. And actively, as you're applying for low income housing or as you're applying for SNAP benefits, I myself was doing the role of a social worker and a case manager, and I didn't even know what that was. And so later on, once I started to think about college and secondary learning, I wanted to be part of that group. I wanted to be part of helping people accomplish their human potential because somebody poured that opportunity into me. And so early on, I didn't really have too much of a grasp on the field of social work. So I placed myself at every internship opportunity you can imagine and every job shadow that you could think of. So I wanted to know what a nonprofit was. I wanted to know what city governments did. I wanted to know, what local mentorship organizations did. So for me, it was this idea of how can I have as much information about what social workers are and what they can be so I can make a wise decision on who I can be. And the best information I collected is you could be anything with social work, right? If you have the initiative, you have the desire, you could do anything with social work and champion social justice. And so I think shortly after my undergraduate, I realized that macro social work, administration, and policy is what I wanted to focus on so I can have, in essence, the maximum impact. Um, and that brought me to state government, where I oversaw substance use prevention and mental health services for the eastern block of the state. And later on, I wanted to just refine my technical skills, but also my understanding of social justice a little bit better, which brought me to this program. And I think it's been a tremendous game changer for me and helping me understand who I am as a person, who I am as a social justice advocate, but also empowering me to have the technical skills so I could really come out into the real world and start to make a difference. So that is my background and why I chose the field of social work and why I'm happy to say that I'm a social worker today.
Um, I am was one of those people that came into social work without a social work background. My undergraduate degree was in neuroscience, and for the longest time, I thought I wanted to do research. I wanted to go to medical school, and just throughout my undergrad journey, found that that wasn't the best fit for me. So, um, I looked for different opportunities, whether that be internships, and I was at a university where they really encourage like co-ops or like long-term internships to really explore what folks are interested in. And it was through that experience where I was able to work with nonprofits. I was introduced to like different AmeriCorps programs, so I participated in Jumpstart and City Year, where I was able to like work with students, which really kind of helped me figure out, oh, I really enjoy that like connection. I love work thinking about the systems and environments that my students were in. That really like lit a fire in me. And then after my city year, like service year, I worked at a small nonprofit where my executive director, my other colleagues were social workers. They all different had different journeys into where they kind of ended up and their career points. And I saw them and was like, I want to do what they're doing. How do I get there? And I didn't really have a good understanding of what social work was. So it was really through encouragement of like my mentors and people around me, kind of listening to, oh, so you did this before you came here. What was that like? Um, and just being okay with like I might not know exactly what I want to do with a social work degree, but I see people around me that have a social work degree and they're doing some cool stuff. So that's how I kind of found my way into social work, kind of found my way to the University of Washington, and just kind of along for the ride of figuring out like what in this field that I'm really passionate and interested about, but also like sustainable to like continue as a social worker. So that's how I kind of ended up here.
Right, I had to think about this one and kind of go way back for a little bit. So just I guess this will make more sense once I kind of give out some background information. So which I would consider myself a non-traditional student. It actually took me 8 years to get my associate's degree, and within that time period, I ended up dropping out of college, going to the military, meeting a bunch of folks who were in college, and getting inspired to come back. And originally, I actually thought I was going to be a teacher. I was really interested in working with youth, specifically high schoolers. That age, for whatever reason, that was the most fascinating age, I think, for me. But when I was working on my associates, I did a really, really short sort of volunteer work where I got to be in one of the South End schools here in Seattle. And I remember one of my first thoughts was like, man, there's only so much you can do in the classroom. And in reality, there's so much going on in the lives of people outside, which could really impact, what they're doing in school and outside of school and those sort of, things. And so I think for me, that was the first time I was like, oh, I want to understand, how to provide support in a way that's not teaching. Because I think in my head, I was thinking, well, teaching history may not necessarily be the most helpful for folks in my community at this point on. And so that's what actually got me to apply for the BSW program. And yeah, I applied and apparently I never left. But I applied and then I got into community work. I was really interested in I think it's still considered CCIP, but the Community Centered Integrated Practice Program, just because I want to understand more about the community work on that sort of meso middle level. I want to understand how communities work. How do you work alongside with communities, which led me to working as a therapist in a nonprofit here in down and over in South Seattle for a good 4 years. And so really, I think what it was for me was At the end of the day, I really want to work with people, and I want to also work with second generation folks. I think I'm not the only one, I'm sure, here in this room, but I want to work with folks who are in that sort of between bridges of being like a first generation and like a third generation and even like one and a half, And so I think really a lot of it was providing support. And so that was kind of where it all started for me.
I'm really loving hearing about people's paths to social work. And as I was preparing for the panel, I was thinking about how important it is for me to honor like all the work that I and others have done that isn't necessarily called a career path in academic spaces. Like my work for many, many years was as a barista and working in restaurants and waiting tables and delivering pizzas and doing food service. And I did that work for years and years and years. And I feel like that was my start in social work, like interacting with people, working in systems, being in the flow of what's happening, figuring out how to work together, how to work with this person, how to work with that person, and how to get things done. And I find that often in like academic spaces, we don't honor the labor that isn't considered to be like academic labor. So I wanted to speak in that part of my story. And then I had like a career also in public health. Um, and I worked in public health for years in Seattle and also internationally. And um, I came to a point in my career where I was really not understanding the system that I was working in and whether it was effective and why it was happening the way that it was happening, and really feeling like I'm not in the right place and I need to get out of here and get into a place where I feel more aligned. And I would say at that point, I didn't identify as like a politicized person per se. I'm mixed and I grew up with class privilege. And so a lot of learning has been out in life for me. I've had a lot of privileges, but I was like, something about this just is not right. What do I want to do? And so I went through a deep period of learning, studying, talking to people, and figuring out like what is most aligned for me. And I came to social work because I wanted to work directly with people. And I love working with people. I love just showing care and respect for humanity and for life through working with people. And social work felt like a place where I could, like Grace was saying, just have many different options and kind of explore like what that might look like without being locked in to one particular place.
Wow, thank you for sharing your journey that led you to social work. It made me think about how there are already many people existing in our lives. Sometimes without contact, it can be someone we get inspired by that are social workers just without the title or the salary. And this also reminded me of what I wrote in my personal statement about 2 years ago, that I said I wanted to pursue a career that allowed me to give back to the community that has nurtured me. It speaks to me that we all see this kind of reciprocity of love and care within the community, and also like understanding and seeing struggles that we or others are going through, and really motivated by that essence of love for human beings around us. Although sometimes they can be bad, but we still have so much love for people. Um, it's a really good feeling that I'm getting in this space just from hearing all your stories. So now, thanks for the background, and now let's move forward to your present social work journey. Could you tell us a bit more about what type of work you're currently doing? What do you enjoy most in this stage of your social work career? And what should students know about your field before they enter? And feel free, whenever someone is ready, feel free to chime in. Thank
Yeah, I could tackle that one a little bit. So, as I shared earlier, currently I am a community partnerships manager at a local school district nearby. I also teach at the University of Washington. And so the areas that I focus on are public policy as a whole, community partnerships, and really focusing on this concept of workforce development. So, how do you bring on new social workers? How do you make sure that they feel adequately supported and adequately valued in the field and that they remain in the field? And so it's quite a large task and quite a large endeavor, but I love it because it's always rooted in the concept of relationships. And I used to have a mentor who also graduated from the University of Washington School of Social Work that used to always say there are three critical parts to moving public policy. Uh, First one is relationships. Second one is relationships. And if y'all want to guess the third one, you guessed it right. It's relationships. And so I really hone in on relationships because as much as technical skills you can have and prowess, what's fundamental is your relationship and your ability to connect with fields. And so what I love about being in social work, it's this ability to create system level change, especially as you're engaging with macro level social work and public policy. And it's about creating change that is helping to maximize the potential of communities. So I always say I'm in the business of people, and removing barriers and adding resources which maximize potential is my product, or it's my North Star. And I think for me, given that that's my North Star, that's what I love about my role. I love to be present when I see a community partner come into the school district. So now there's enhancement opportunities for kiddos that don't have that opportunity after school, right? I love to be in a classroom and engage in collaborative learning where I see students asking brilliant questions and being idealistic about the world and seeing a brighter future than those of us who've already graduated and may already be a bit stagnant, right? They have a different idea. They're hopeful about the world. They're optimistic, which is inspiring. And so for me, that is the kind of work I'm engaged in now. And that's what I love about being in the field of social work.
I can hop in here. I currently work as a program coordinator with the Korean Community Service Center. KCSC is a community based organization that serves the Korean diaspora community here in the Puget Sound region. And really, our bread and butter is providing linguistically and culturally grounded programs and service navigation for the Korean American community in this region. And so I wear a lot of different hats at KCSC. KCSC it started out as a very grassroots place, and we're at that stage of development of a nonprofit where we're building systems to make things more efficient. So that's a lot of what I do. I like to explain to folks like I do a lot of capacity building within the agency. So this includes developing and implementing trainings for staff, project management, just different overall capacity building initiatives. So maybe supporting like a certification effort or looking at internal flow of like how do community members come to us? How do the community members interact when they are with us? And what happens when they leave? And just really rooting our work and thinking about how does community interact with the agency that in a way that's like trauma informed, empowerment based, and family centered. So I do a lot of I like to picture like I'm helping build up our staff who are majority like first gen immigrants speaking that share that lived experience with a lot of the community members that come to KCSC. And it's like I love it because I get to do so many different things. Like I think that's something that's really great, but also sometimes challenging of working in a small nonprofit is there's a lot of different hats I get to wear. There's a lot of different ways I can work within the agency. It's in something you said, Liza, earlier about like giving back to the community that nurtured you. Like that really resonated with me because something I find really amazing about working in a community-based organization where I am also part of that community is being able to kind of like imagine what we can do for community and being actually be able to build it with others who share like similar values and passions. Um, so yeah, a lot as someone working in a small nonprofit, I wear a lot of hats, and it's a really great learning opportunity if you're interested in like the social work space, working in nonprofits, working in community, because it's a lot of like I see a need, let's fix the need in a sustainable way. Is how I like to describe what I do to folks that aren't in social work and don't like speak the social work lingo. Um, so yeah.
think I'm going to go at this question in a different angle just because I don't think anyone wants to hear about me taking finals right now and being a student. So I'm gonna let me go ahead and backtrack a little bit. But one thing I can say that I have been able to do is honestly I've been able to explore multiple like sides of the field. I've been able to work in nonprofit as a school-based clinical therapist and being able to work with youth one-on-one, working with families and providing in-home services. And so, the idea of wearing a lot of hats is something that I remember very well. And, you know, the ability to get clinically licensed and to explore that part of the field was something that was very fulfilling. But on the other hand, I've been able to transition as well into doing more evaluation and research. And so, honestly, what social work, the interesting thing about it is it's very interdisciplinary in terms of a lot of the theories come from a lot of different fields that make up this field. And so there's a lot of different directions and angles that you can explore. You can also become clinically licensed and go to private practice route. I didn't do it myself personally, but these are things that people do along with teaching. And so I would say that there's definitely a broadness and a sort of specialization at the same time that you can really explore within social work. But yeah, I don't think anyone wants to hear me about writing about finals. So let's leave that where it is.
Yeah, I would say that, gosh, I've done a lot of different kinds of social work that have all shaped how I do my work right now. And as I shared, like I'd been working in public health in a past life and really complex systems that I found to be not human centered. And so I really wanted to get back to working with people one on one or working in groups. And so I did a lot of that work. I worked out of the Department of Psychiatry at Harborview on a multidisciplinary harm reduction team as the only social worker with doctors and nurses, meeting people where they're at, serving using adults. I worked in community mental health with youth, facilitating groups, working with trans kids, and working with families. And now I'm working at the University of Washington, serving social work students who I consider to be my constituents. And now that I have like all of these other kinds of like experiences and the blessing of having worked with so many people who have so much wisdom in different areas of social work, I'm working more in systems than I thought I would be. Um, and so a specific example I can give you is that I work I work with or kind of co-chair the University of Washington's gender affirming care team. And so particularly right now, it's really important that all of the HIPAA compliant providers on our campus are really shored up on gender affirming care of all kinds and that we're up with the standards of care. We're getting information to students about what students can access and how. By the way, it's free. When you're a student, you're paying for it in your tuition to access healthcare, to access mental health care. And so that's a really like meaningful part of my work right now that is kind of unexpected because I really do love that person-centered work with students, but I'm doing the systems piece as well. I will also say like my absolute favorite part of the work that I get to do right now, like some other folks have spoken to, is like um, just really working like with what I consider to be community. And for me, that is mentoring student organizers. Outside of my work, I'm definitely like up in the mix in social movement spaces, and that is so essential for me. And so to really be able to support social work students to figure out how do I bridge like the professional space with the community space and be able to pay my bills and have a job, but also make sure that I'm in the mix in community and living my values. That is, I feel honored to be able to do that work.
Oh, thank you. I'm really enjoying hearing the breadth and depth of the work you're all engaged in. And thank you for, again, for sharing your insights with your expertise in each of your field. So next question, we can keep it shorter. It's just asking, what are some next steps you foresee yourself in your social work career? What's coming up next for you?
I think for me, it's always been about impact. Again, thinking back to like mentors, it's not about positions because to a certain level, if you have an idea about impact, you can really be in any position and find fulfillment. But if you're searching for positions or titles, you may end up there and it may not be as rewarding, right? So always pursuing impact and asking yourself the grander question of what do you enjoy and how can social work fit into that? Because this is hard work at times. And so if you're able to really find something that you enjoy, it's much more easier to push and to navigate and find a bit of fulfillment in the grander work that you're going to be doing.
For me, one very like concrete kind of milestone, like a goal I'm working towards right now is becoming a fully like an independently licensed social worker. So it's kind of to my part-time job as being a therapist because in my role at the Korean Community Service Center, I don't have the opportunity to work in a more clinical space, and it's really important for me for my professional kind of journey to be licensed. So slowly chipping away at that. Maybe in the next couple of years that will it'll happen, but that's something that I'm working towards by seeking out other like clinical opportunities on top of my job. And then I think just continuing to grow as a social worker, while that really seems really broad, like I think I'm always seeking out opportunities, whether that it be knowledge or connections, just different ways that how can I just continue my learning in this field? How can I grow my confidence as a social worker, as someone who has really bad imposter syndrome, and just continue to build on different experiences because I think all the panelists have kind of touched on the field is so vast and there's so much to learn and so much to um, just there's so much learning and always looking forward to different places to kind of seek that out.
I think for me, at some point, my hope is to stay in academia and eventually research and teach in an R1 institution. But I think for me, I'm really thinking about the values of what I want to take with me when completing this program. And one of the things I would like to do is I would love to continue to sort of see how research and practice can complement each other. Um, I think sometimes there could be this sort of dynamic of like one informing the other, but in reality, they both need each other and they both exist with each other. And so um, I think that's one really important emphasis that and sort of value that I want to take with me as I sort of move forward and continue to grow in my capacity.
I'm feeling inspired very much by what others are saying and a little unsure and overwhelmed around what exactly to say. Um, one thing I can share is that I've started offering clinical supervision, which is not something I ever imagined that I would, and that's been a really meaningful practice for me, particularly because I'm ordained clergy in my lineage and really bring in spiritual components of um, work and clinical work into the supervision, which I think for many folks is really wanted and needed. Um, and that's been really meaningful. So that's one piece I can speak to. And I don't know if this really fits into career exactly, but I want to express that a strong area of interest of mine is really figuring out and like working in community, working with students, working with colleagues to figure out like what do we actually do in the moment when we're trying to live out our values? And how does that unfold? And how do we share information about what skills we need? And how do we share skills with each other?
Thank you. So this will be our last question before the Q&A. This is also a time for the attendees. If you have any questions, feel free to um, put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them. So we're social workers. We love, at least I love reflective practices. Our last question will be asking if you could go back and give your younger self advice at the start of your social work journey, what would it be? And then just adding on to that in one short sentence, could you offer any advice to current or prospective MSW students?
I think for me, it's don't do nothing, trying to do something big. I think I'm very grand ideas, but sometimes it's um, paralysis by analysis, and I can see it constantly unfolding in different parts of my life. And so just focusing a little bit more on action, and not just action, and not in the sense of, I think in social work, there's this idea about joining conversations, being part of the table, build the table, you know, don't just join the conversation, lead the conversation. And I think as social workers, embracing leadership and embracing this idea that we could do more, that we don't just join, that we really initiate, we lead, we take action, because that is in essence what we do. And so there's parts of that that are advice, and there's parts of that um, that I would say are more feedback to myself.
When I saw this question, I was like, ooh, this is a good one. Like, what would I tell myself at maybe the start of my MSW? Um, and I think a lot of, so I guess a little background, I'm a really big introvert. My, when I did my MSW, it was all online. So that was my happy place. Could just be in my safe space and do my thing, and it was great. But I think now, kind of looking back, an advice I would tell myself is to maybe get out of my comfort zone a little bit and like build community, like seek out friends, seek out mentors, seek out colleagues, and like cultivate those connections. Because I think when I think about what's sustaining me in this field, what helps me kind of push through or kind of overcome barriers that when the work just gets hard, it really is my like social work friends who it's my mentors that I kind of that I am still connected to through the School of Social Work, and just having space to either vent, either seek advice, problem solve, like that has been so invaluable to me navigating the social work field. So I guess like the advice that I would tell myself and maybe share with you all is like, seek out community, build that community, even if it's like uncomfy, if there's like fellow introverts out there, like even though it might be hard in the moment, like there's so much value to having like a community around you of social workers.
I think one thing that I kept telling myself over and over and over again was embrace the uncomfortableness of every situation that you're going to be in. However, I think it's also important that you got to breathe and take it one step at a time because those times will be there. So honestly, I think just being as present as you can within the journey and really make sure that you're in it and you're present in the journey. You're not thinking 10 steps ahead sometimes. Sometimes that's kind of something that we all need every once in a while. So yeah, if I could say something to my younger self to be just take, breathe, take it slow. You're in this journey, you're in the right place wherever you're at right now. This will work out. It's all good. So
Such, such good advice. Um, I think to my younger social work self, I would say, don't be scared. If you're thinking it and feeling it, at least one other person in the room is. And so take a risk and see what happens.
Well, thank you. That was our last question for the prepared questions. I want to also just reiterate this element of community and relationship building we've all emphasized in your answers. It's this is a really amazing feeling to be in the same space with other social workers to build a coalition. And thank you for sharing your knowledge so we can pass this baton on to the next aspiring social worker and really push for this momentum to be going in justice and push forward this hard work and heart work. So this will be the end for our panel section, and we will stop the recording.